Well, good afternoon. It is noon on a Wednesday. That means it is time for Iowa Learning Farms Conservation Webinar Series. I'm Liz Ripley. I'll be your host today, and I'm thrilled to have with us from the Soil Health Institute, Minerva Dorantes and Shannon Moeller. And they're going to be sharing with us some soil health with their Soil Health Institute study of assessing soil health in the Des Moines Lobe region of Iowa. And as a reminder, if you have questions for our presenters today, feel free to submit those to me in the chat, and we will have Q&A following their presentation. So at this time, I'm going to turn the virtual floor over to you all, and we look forward to a great discussion following.
Thank you very much, Liz. Thank you everybody for joining us today. My name is Minerva Dorantes, and with me today is Shannon Moeller. I'm a project soil scientist with the Soil Health Institute. And Shannon, do you want to say a couple words about you and your role at SHI?
Sure. Thanks, Minerva. I'm Shannon Moeller, and I recently started with the Soil Health Institute as a soil health educator. Prior to this, some of you may know me from working on the Iowa Seed Corn Cover Crop Initiative. I actually live here in Northeast Iowa, have lived in Iowa my entire life, and am super excited to be working on this study for the Des Moines Lobe area. And thank you, Iowa Learning Farms, for having us today.
Thank you, Shannon. And I'm a native Illinoisan, not Iowan, but really looking forward to meeting some of you out in the field when we're soil sampling pretty soon here in the next few weeks. And thanks again for joining us today to hear more about this project. And so today we'll talk about the soil health study that we have going on in the Des Moines Lobe region. That's Major Land Resource Area 103 of Iowa, or North Central Iowa. But before I get into that, I want to give you a little bit of a background on our institute. So at the Soil Health Institute, our mission is to safeguard and enhance the vitality and the productivity of soils through scientific research and advancement. And we do this mainly by conducting research and empowering growers with knowledge to successfully adopt regenerative soil health systems that can contribute economic and environmental benefits to agriculture and society. So we are a global nonprofit, and we're really working in many parts of the US currently. If you want to learn more about our institute and some of our projects, you can scan this QR code that's on the right, and that'll take you to our main webpage. And so the Des Moines Lobe Soil Health Study really stems from this long-term or longer-term project called the North American Project to Evaluate Soil Health Measurements, or NAPSHM for short. So the goal of this project was to identify most effective indicators of soil health, and scientists at the Soil Health Institute, in collaboration with many other scientists across the country, Canada, and Mexico, what they did is that they evaluated soil health indicators on long-term agricultural research sites. They were looking specifically at 124 different long-term experimental sites, which you can see here indicated by the black dots on the map on the right. And this was a 3-year project to assess soil health across these different long-term experimental sites. And so these scientists collected over 30 measurements that were indicators of soil health. And of those, there was a blue ribbon panel that selected 3 of those measurements as a minimum suite of soil health measurements, which are the ones that we've adopted now on many of our soil health assessment projects across the country. And they're the ones that I will describe in a little more detail next. And just to note here that you can scan the QR code that's next to the map on the right, and that'll take you to a fact sheet about NAPSHM, this project, and some of the results that were found. And so the 3 soil health measurements really followed these criteria. They were meant to conceptually be linked to soil ecosystem services, particularly soil ecosystem services like how to reduce erosion and soils service to store carbon and its potential to increase plant available water. And so, it was important for these soil health measurements to be responsive to soil health management practices, such as reduced tillage or the implementation of cover crops and organic amendments. So all of these management practices that really are following the soil health principles of maintaining long-term living roots and maintaining soil covered minimizing soil disturbance and such. Additionally, these soil health measurements needed to be cost efficient so that there could be measurement done at scale. And so these need to be inexpensive, available in many labs, and reproducible. So in general, they need to be practical measurements. So the selected measurements are organic carbon concentration. And soil organic carbon is primarily comprised of non-living organic matter. In fact, it's the major component of soil organic matter. And it's related to nutrient availability, microbial activity, soil structure, and carbon storage potential. And we know that soil organic carbon or organic carbon concentration is more reproducible as a measurement than organic matter. And it can also be used in carbon market measurements. The other measurement that they selected through NAPESHM is the carbon mineralization potential. And so soil organisms, they do a lot of important work in the soil. They cycle nutrients, they help build soil structure. They're also, they form beneficial relationships with plants and roots. And so carbon mineralization potential is really measuring microbial respiration. And so it's an indicator of the potential microbial activity in the soil, and it can be related to soil microbial biomass. And so microbial biomass and microbial activity is directly related to nutrient cycling, so nutrient availability and soil structure and carbon storage potential. So these are the things that carbon mineralization potential is able to tell us about our soils. The third measurement is aggregate stability. And aggregates are really soil structural units. They contain sand, silt, and clay, particles that are held together by organic matter, by root exudates and other organic materials in the soil. And it's really difficult to measure soil structure. And so instead, we're using wet aggregate stability as a proxy for soil structure. And wet aggregate stability really is a measure of a dry soil's aggregate stability or aggregate's ability to resist dispersion when it's re-wetted. And the way that this is computed is as a fraction of the aggregates that remain after exposure to water and or other mechanical disturbances. But basically, we drop these aggregates into water, like you can see in the video here, and then we measure the fraction of the remaining aggregate after it's been wet. And aggregate stability is linked to reduced erosion. It's linked to increased infiltration in the soil and water storage. And so it gives us that information about our soil properties and the soil's functions. And finally, available water holding capacity is not a direct measurement that we collect as part of our soil health assessment projects, but it is one that we can estimate using these functions, or they're called pedo-transfer functions or equations that are used to predict this one. So available water holding capacity is really just the water that the soil can store and then provide back to the plants. This property is linked to increased drought resilience. So the higher your available water holding capacity, the better able your soil is to cope with and return from a drought as a healthy soil. And so at Soil Health Institute, we're using equations to predict the available water holding capacity. And the functions look like what you see on the graph on the right. And so we take soil texture and the concentration of organic carbon, and then we're able to predict the available water holding capacity at the various steps. So these are the selected soil health measurements that stemmed from that longer term study of NAPESHM. And now we're collecting these for every one of the soil health projects that we do across the country. And really, this question, right, is what we still mean to answer. Is my soil healthy? Is your soil healthy? And is it healthy besides, just being able to produce biomass? So beyond yield, what other functions is it serving that tell us how healthy it is? And so we're collecting these different soil health measurements, and really what we're doing is we're taking these measurements across similar soil types and different management systems. And that helps us make interpretations about your soil's health within the region and within similar soil types as yours. And so these are the measurements, or this is what the interpretations of those measurements look like. So people who participate in our soil health assessment projects, they'll receive a report with a soil health interpretation that looks like this. They'll see values for the different soil health measurements that we're collecting: organic carbon concentration, potential carbon mineralization, wet aggregate stability, and available water holding capacity. And then they'll see the ranges of values that have been measured across each of the different management systems, so baseline or conventional soil health management systems and reference systems or long-term perennial systems. And then we'll also indicate where what the value is in the fields where we collected those samples, so that you know that, for example, your organic carbon concentration value is here, but similar soil types to yours in a reference system can reach an organic carbon concentration value that's over here at the other end, right, at about 2.2%. And so this really helps producers, we believe, set ambitious but achievable goals for their soil type and climate for each of the different soil health measurements. And next, Shannon's going to introduce the Des Moines Lobe project for soil health assessment in MLRA 103. Take it away, Shannon.
Thanks, Minerva. So as Minerva mentioned, this is the Soil Health in the Des Moines Lobe of Iowa is one of several soil health targets projects that the Soil Health Institute is working on based off of a long-term study we call NAPSHM, which you can find more information about all of this on our website as well. This particular project is just a one-year project at this time, and we are specifically looking at the most widely cultivated soils in Major Land Resource Area 103, which we call the Des Moines Lobe. So you can see where we've pulled that little graph out with the red and with the yellow and green colors on it. The yellow areas were corn in 2022, and the green areas were soybeans in 2022. So you can see that this is a pretty, I don't necessarily want to say rural area, although I think that's a pretty good description as well, but definitely high row crop intensive area. This covers parts of 29 counties and almost 8 million acres of Iowa. A recent study through the Iowa Nutrient Research Education Council shows that only about 12% of Iowa farmland has cover crops, and about 41% are using no-till practices. So we have quite a ways to go on moving that needle on conservation practices. We are going to be in the Des Moines Lobe region looking at all kinds of different management systems. So basically, if you have farmland, go ahead and reach out to us no matter how you farm. If you have our soil types, which I'll get into that in the next slide, but if you have the soil types we're looking for, we will want to have your land in the project as a sample. So our baseline meta category is going to include conventional tillage, anything that's been conventional tillage for more than 5 years. And if you've used cover crops, but you haven't stuck with them, or if it's kind of every other year, or maybe just oats once in a while and nothing else, you're still going to fall into that baseline management system. The next one we're looking at is soil health management system. So that's going to be longer term, no-till, strip till, and or cover crop adoption as well. So we're looking at if you've had 3 years or more of cover crops and no-till, or even cover crops with still some tillage. Typically, if you're using cover crops, you probably already have reduced your tillage, at least in the spring, significantly. So that would bump you up too in the soil health. management system. And then if you've been in a no-till strip till system for more than 3 years without using cover crops, we're going to quantify you in the soil health management system as well. So later on, we'll get into all the details on specific operations, but just for the sake of categorizing farms as baseline soil health or reference sites, this is kind of what we're looking at. Reference sites, we've kind of listed there some examples. That's going to be anything that's been in a perennial system for 5 years or more, and ideally 10 years or more. So I've got a couple of fields that I'm looking at that have had CRP for decades. Something like that's going to qualify. Restored prairie, permanent pasture. I believe we've got a couple of those in our project. Even like if you've got a nice fence row with a big buffer around it, that's maybe that's your traffic turnaround area, but you don't necessarily do anything with that buffer area, and then you've got the nice fence and there's nothing on the other side for a little ways. Even something like that might qualify as a reference site. So we're trying to find basically in the same soil types. We're trying to find baseline soil health and reference systems within the same neighborhood so that this is a fair and effective comparison on our results. When we're saying, the baseline system organic matter is 1%, the reference site is 3%, we expect that most farms can move the needle, over to whatever level we're moving at. We want that comparison to be as fair as possible. And speaking of soil types, here is a map of different soil types in the area. And then over to the right, you can see we are looking specifically at the 4 types that represent about 95% of the row cropped acreage in the Des Moines Lobe. So these are going to be a lot of loam soils. So if you've got a fine loamy well drained, fine loamy intermediately drained, and fine loamy poorly drained soils, and then in your little prairie pothole depressions, some of those clayey, poorly drained soils are going to qualify as well. So you can see in the map there, most of the stuff that's green are going to be specifically in the soil types that we are looking for. And soil types and soil series are a little bit different. So the 4 types does not mean 4 series. So here are some examples of some of the series that are going to be most common in that region. So Clarion, Webster, Nicolette, probably most, if not all of you are familiar with some of these names. So if you've got those in your field, definitely reach out to us. Some of those Okoboji in the low spots. And like I said, this is not a limited list. I actually don't know off the top of my head how many series would fall under these categories. But these are just, the main ones that probably most everyone has in their fields in the Des Moines Lobe region that we're looking at. So. And then to reiterate again, I know Minerva went over the measurements and kind of how they translate a little bit ago, but specifically, we're going to be looking at aggregate stability just in the top 2.5 inches. And then all of the other measurements, we're going to be sampling at 0 to 6 inches and 6 to 12 inches. So for anyone who's not done a bulk density sample yet, that 6 to 12 inch is a doozy. So we're going to be doing some manual labor this summer. And again, if we've piqued your interest, these are the counties. It's going to be parts or whole in some cases, parts of 29 different counties in north central Iowa. So if you have land, if you're a landowner, a farmer, if you have a cousin who farms there, any kind of connection you have for someone who might be interested, definitely have them reach out to us. We would be, at the very least, we'll talk to them and see if they qualify for our project. And then this is the process for participation. So we will start with a short call just to determine your eligibility. And that's going to be based mostly on soil type. So like a lot, I'm not sure we have any specific crop management practices that would throw someone out, as long as you're in a corn soy rotation, which is going to cover a large portion of farmers who might be interested. So we'll double check then, and then we'll get your general management information. So that's going to be just a short, and a lot of this is done in an email when you reach out to me too. You might say, you know, here's a map of my field, and here's the general overview of tillage practices. We've been no-till for 6 years, and we've had cover crops for 4. Then we know right away that we can throw you into a soil health management category, for example. So that's kind of that first step there. Then these first 3 are going to kind of all overlap a little bit. So the next one is going to be a visit to your farm. So that's going to be when we're out doing soil sampling between May and July. So it should be warm by then. Kind of looks, yeah, you know, a little bit uplifting forecast in the near future. So hopefully it'll stay that way. And I don't want to scare anyone, but we will be doing a call to collect a detailed 5-year management history of the fields that we're going to be sampling. So these might happen out of order due to the fact that we're sampling a little bit later. I am actually hoping to get all the management history as much as I can before we get into the field. So that's going to be history of tillage, crop history, all going back to 2018. But, you know, anything that's been done on that field, we're going to want to try to have a record of. So I mean, I don't think it needs to be something that scares anyone off from participating. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that, you know, we are going to have a little bit of a longer call at some point. Maybe that's me, you know, riding around with you in the tractor. Maybe that's you filling out a form via email, if that works best. We're going to work with you however we can to get that. And then that's going to help us in the end to be able to be even more organized in how we present our data. So we'll be able to say overall, these practices fell within this range, but you know, we had these 2 outliers where this field had cover crops on these 2 years. It was different than the rest in the area, or, you know, something to that extent. So we're not sharing your data with anyone, just to be clear. Participants will receive a soil health and carbon stock report with interpretations for your field sample. So that's going to be like where Minerva shared earlier in the presentation with the little graph that showed the baseline soil health and reference sites, you know, organic carbon, soil carbon mineralization potential, etc. You're going to get a detailed report that, and it's not just going to be the chart, it's going to explain what the chart says, how you can understand that for your field, and, you know, where we can reasonably go from here. That's going to be in your lab data included in that. And then as a token of appreciation for your time, all participants will also receive a $100 Visa gift card. So I think that's going to wrap it up for this slide. So if you are interested in participating, please reach out to us. I tried to recruit, you know, a few farmers that I've worked with in the past. I'm sure I've missed a few. So if you think that you want to participate and you've worked with me before, feel free to reach out directly. But either one of us will, you know, get you started in the right way.
Thanks, Shannon. And I think that was our last slide here before we get into some of the stuff for Iowa Learning Farms on, you know, getting your continuing education units, for example, for your CCA, et cetera. And I believe with that, I'd like to thank you all for your attention. Thanks for coming to this webinar, and we're taking questions if you've got any. And if I may, let me come back to this slide here just for a few seconds. In case you are interested in participating, we'd love to have you. Please reach out to us. Either email or phone is fine. And with that, I think, Liz, you can take over my slides too, whenever you want.
Yeah, so if you want to go to that slide about CCA credits.
Yep.
So if you joined today and are looking for a CCA CEU, you can do so by emailing Elena Whitaker, that's ALENAW at iastate.edu by 5 p.m. today with the name that you watch the webinar with, if it's different than maybe the name you're registered as your CCA, and then that number so we can get those credits turned in for you. And I'll put her email in the chat as well, so you can grab it from there. If you want to go ahead to the next one. We are also asking folks to participate in this voluntary demographic survey. So if you watch this live, we ask that you fill out this survey via the QR code here. You can also find it at iowalearningfarms.org/survey. You only need to do it once. So if you've already done it for a previous 2023 webinar, thank you. And if not, we'd appreciate your feedback through this survey. So again, I'll put that link there in the chat along with Elena's email. And if you want to advance one more time, we're excited to have next week with us Dr. Sartorius Arcantoulis from our Department of Agronomy here at Iowa State, and he's going to review Iowa's water and nitrogen balances using the APSIM model. So you can join us again next week at noon. And I just want to encourage folks, again, if you have questions, feel free to submit those to me in the chat while we get settled in here with those CCA credits and survey links. All right, so one question that has come in so far, curious, what role does the 24-hour CO2 respiration play in your soil health calculations done by the Institute?
That's a great question. And our 24-hour respiration is really an indicator of the microbial activity. So it helps us also get a measure. It's a proxy for microbial biomass. And some studies have found that this helps us understand nutrient cycling and carbon cycling. And so we're representing this, or we're collecting this as a measurement of soil health across many different projects. Because it is one of the 3 soil health measurements for the minimum suite that was decided on through the NATION long-term studies. But in general, that's what it is. It's an indicator of potential microbial activity, which is linked to nutrient cycling, carbon storage, soil structure, and those types of functions in the soil.
Yeah, so we've had a comment here, and maybe you just want to add to it, but a 1% increase in organic matter can allow 1 acre to hold a significant amount of water. So what does that mean in terms of, drought conditions, things like that? What does that mean to the producer?
Yeah, I think in this day and age where our climate is changing and where our weather is so really unpredictable, I think it's very important to focus on soil health, particularly having a measurement of the different indicators of soil health to fall back on to understand how your soils are functioning. Having repeated measures of these soil health measurements, or these soil health indicators rather, is very important because they can tell you that, well, one, they can help you prepare for those types of events like droughts or flooding or extreme weather in any sense, really. And they can also help you plan long-term for, an increase in carbon storage, for example. So they really tell us a lot about the soil functions. And so we believe that it's an important way to monitor, the soil functions and plan for them as well.
And I think, Shannon, you mentioned that the project is currently 1 year. So someone's curious, when will the results be available to the public? Kind of an aggregated report with the possibility of maybe doing another one of these to follow up on it.
We would hope so.
Just I think Minerva could probably handle this one.
We hope to have the reports, so the interpretations and the data back to farmers this year by November. And so we're really pushing to finish collecting all of our samples by mid-July and hoping to get that analysis back in, the next in 2 months or so time after that, so that we can return the reports by late November. And we hope that this will be, this will lead to a multi-year project in the region. It's just unfortunately, currently we only have funding for 1 year of these measurements.
and kind of tied into this, obviously the individual farmers are getting the results, but what are the outcomes of the study beyond sharing with those individuals? Is there anything for the public or possibly guide to policy decision making?
Yeah, the Soil Health Institute currently does sit in on several decision-making meetings at the government level, with Congress specifically, particularly in when it has to do with Farm Bill. But our NAPSHM study results were recently just released for public use and for research, and so those are available to the public now. All of this data needs to be, because it's got some PII, personal identifiable information, that needs to be scrubbed first. When you sign a consent form and when you're participating in the study, we agree that, and we inform you that we will not be sharing any of your data with any third parties, and we stick to that. And so we are really conscious of, especially with the 5-year management data, with making sure that that is in a safe place and that it's not being shared with anybody else, because some of it is sensitive information. However, we do plan to summarize this information and prepare some fact sheets and scientific reports at the end of the study, and once we've collected all of that data. And if you all are interested in seeing those results, some folks have asked us to give back or to return and present a webinar on the results, and so we've got some of those scheduled for the end of the year already, with some of our partners, including Practical Farmers of Iowa and the USDA ARS.
So this person's curious. I know they're not on the Lobe. So has this been done, or is there desire to do this with other Iowa soil associations?
To my knowledge, there are some developing projects in the rest of the state of Iowa, and Shannon may be participating in those in the near future here. They're still under development. We don't have a set start date yet, but please look at our website, look out for an announcement for those. We believe that there will be some coming to the west and possibly southeastern regions.
And kind of tied into that, why was the Des Moines Lobe chosen to be this kind of starting point?
Well, our funder for this project is Wells Fargo, and I believe that they had a particular interest in the region because they had read, or because one of their headquarters is in that region, I believe. But they, as our funder, they selected the region where this project would be implemented.
And curious here, are you still looking for reference land like CRP property, for example?
Definitely. We are looking for reference sites. We're looking for a lot of reference sites in soil health systems as well. So folks who are implementing any type of reduced tillage, no-till or strip till, and have cover crops, yeah, we definitely need those sites for this study. Shannon, did you want to add something about why this region was selected?
I was going to mention, and I think Liz is probably familiar with this as well, but this is a conversation that I've had a couple of times with Minerva, just about kind of the different areas of Iowa and cover crop in conservation adoption. For example, we know that like Washington County in the southeast part of the state is kind of leading the state there through their NRCS programs, at least in terms of conservation participation. The Des Moines Lobe region, especially kind of going northern, has been a little bit slower to grow those numbers for conservation practices. And so not being a part of this discussion earlier on, I would wager that is probably part of why this area was selected specifically to target, and just, we're as groups promoting soil health practices, not just the Soil Health Institute, but other efforts that I've been a part of in my past as well. We're always looking to scale those practices to make the data available to farmers, and to kind of present these ideas in different ways, because everyone is going to, get something. The farmer who gets something out of one study might not get anything out of another study. So we're kind of I think this is just one more of an effort to, see if we can scale those conservation practices a little bit.
And it sounds like folks are interested in following up with you. And just as a question, they were asking in your email there, it looks like maybe there's a T missing, an institute. So if you want to type in your emails into the chat so people can grab them directly from there, they could copy paste. But yeah, so Soil Health Institute, as it says in the little shield down at the bottom, .org would be your correct email address.
Thank you for catching that.
Yeah. So, okay, bear with me. Processing and reading at the same time. But we've got someone here that works with Dane County, Wisconsin, and they have a farmer who farms in Northwest Dane County in the driftless area, so probably more similar to like Decorah, Northeast Iowa. And on one particular farm he operates, the soil test results taken within the last 4 years has organic matter rating from just 0.7 to 0.2%. Grain farmer with corn and soybeans, some wheat, continuous no-till. So suspecting some compaction in addition to erosion, but the soils are very shallow to bedrock, not much topsoil left, and slopes are pretty significant. Any ideas of what practices they could be doing to help increase organic matter? It's a lot of information. So they're already doing no-till, corn, soybean with some wheat, high sloping land. Recommendations. Oh, you just muted yourself, Minerva.
I meant to unmute. Really, I would say follow the soil health principles. If you can maintain living roots, if you can grow some cover crops, if they aren't already, if it's shallow to bedrock, then you can find some cover crops that do well in shallow soils. If it's shaded, that would be another concern. Because it's on sloping land, you'd want to make sure to, keep that ground covered at all times, especially if it's prone to high wind erosion, apart from just water erosion. But those are all of the things that, I can say off the top of my head. We have a lot of resources on practices that may be beneficial to improving your soil health on our webpage. If you follow the link, or if you go to soilhealthinstitute.org and then click on resources, there's lots of fact sheets there and videos that might be helpful. It is really, sometimes we have to take this on a case-by-case situation, and without really being able to see, those conditions or look at some data, it might be hard to make some recommendations that I think would be beneficial. However, you may be able to find some of that information on a resources page, or reach out to me with a specific question.
Yeah, and
I hope that was helpful.
Give also a plug to consider maybe prairie strips, so using strategically placed perennials within the field, especially to help with that erosion. Now it'll improve soil health underneath those living roots, as well as protecting the soil that's in between the strips. So
and we've got some farmers in the region, actually more recent participants of this project, who are using prairie strips, who found that to be very helpful.
Excellent. Well, once again, if you want to head on to that last slide, you can join us again next week, as well as every Wednesday at noon for our weekly webinars. And next week we have Dr. Sotirios Arkantoulis, again, talking about his water and nitrogen balances using the APSIN modeling. Thank you both, Shannon and Minerva, for today's webinar. This will be recorded and posted online, so feel free to share with folks following today if they couldn't join us live. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Liz. Thank you everyone for having us. Thanks to the Iowa Learning Farms. And we hope to hear from some of you soon.